Today it was possible to feel the concussions from the war in Iraq on both sides of the Atlantic. In this country, President Bush, for the first time, said he is willing to give the Democrats some of what they want. And across the Atlantic in the United Kingdom today, the man who has supported George Bush more steadfastly than any other ally, Tony Blair, today announced he is through as British Prime Minister. Today was about the political cost of an unpopular war, as our own Tim Russert first reported here on this broadcast last night. The president now has real trouble in his own party. And with the damage now piling up, now the talk begins about a possible Plan B for Iraq.
After Pentagon briefings, the president conceded today that Iraqi leaders must show more political progress if Congress is going to keep funding the war.
One message I have heard from people from both parties is that the idea of benchmarks makes sense, and I agree.
Those benchmarks include political reconciliation between Sunnis and Shias and an agreement to share oil revenues.
General Petraeus' plan ought to be given a chance to work, and we need to give the troops under his command the resources they need to prevail.
Even as the president was making concessions to Democrats, he remained on the defensive, threatening to veto a House bill that would provide only limited war funding through mid-July.
So we reject that idea. It won't work.
The search for common ground comes as the political pressure on the president has reached a new high. Republicans have said openly that September, when General Petraeus is scheduled to issue a progress report on the surge strategy, is a deadline for results. Privately, Republicans have been even more blunt. First reported by...
Now to the other piece of this story. There are combat casualties of the Iraq War. There are civilian casualties. Today we saw a political casualty, Tony Blair stepping down. Blair has been the Prime Minister of Great Britain for a decade, going back to President Clinton's time, and a staunch political ally of the U.S. NBC's Keith Miller reports tonight from London.
With his supporters near tears and wife Sherry looking on, Tony Blair delivered an emotional goodbye after 10 years as Prime Minister.
I think that's long enough for me, but more especially for the country.
Without mentioning Iraq, he asked for understanding.
Hand on heart, I did what I thought was right. I may have been wrong. That's your call.
Elected in a landslide in 1997, Blair was the rock star politician, the youngest Prime Minister of the 20th century. He was the face of cool Britannia. Then 9/11, and suddenly Blair made his decision.
Our job is to be there with you. You're not going to be alone.
The war on terror brought a conservative American president and a liberal British Prime Minister together. There was suspicion. Blair was a firm friend of former President Clinton. Still, Blair and President Bush found a way to bond. Popular in the United States, Tony Blair was perhaps the best Prime Minister America never had. But at home, the press labeled him Bush's poodle, and his approval rating plunged.
Bush is losing his best friend on the world stage. Tony Blair announced he is stepping down as British Prime Minister effective next month. The president called him a remarkable person, but Blair's role as the president's ally ended up costing him dearly. From London, here's Elizabeth Palmer.
Tony Blair chose his home district in northern England to announce that after more than 10 years, it was time to go.
In this job, in the world of today, I think that's long enough for me, but more especially for the country.
The local party faithful may still adore him, but the truth is, much of Britain has fallen out of love with its Prime Minister. Tony Blair swept to power on a wave of optimism.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
But his career was blighted, says Matthew Paris, by one key blunder.
Iraq, Iraq, Iraq. It must haunt him through his dreams now, and it will for the rest of his life.
Before the bad dreams, though, there was a honeymoon that began with the landslide victory Blair won by dragging Britain's old left-wing Labour Party to the political centre. Tony Blair, the idealist with a conscience, brokered a peace agreement in Northern Ireland and convinced Western leaders to stop Slobodan Milosevic's campaign of ethnic cleansing in Kosovo. But when the world changed, Tony Blair's fierce idealism did not.
We will confront the tyrannies and dictatorships and terrorists who put our way of life at risk.
In spite of huge anti-war demonstrations at home, Blair volunteered British troops as America's main ally in Iraq. It earned him a standing ovation in Washington.
Mr. Prime Minister, can I buy you dinner?
Certainly.
But a new nickname at home, Bush's Poodle. And it probably cost him his job. But today, Tony Blair tried one more time to justify himself.
Hand on heart, I did what I thought was right.
Blair, Brown is left to lead a discontented country on his own. Elizabeth Palmer.